The average rent in Chicago has reached its highest point ever. I guess the question is, now what? I'm Matt Thomas with Baird & Warner Real Estate, and today we're talking about rent in Chicago. Before we dive into it, if you're new here, subscribe, like this video. You truly are helping me out in a massive way. For those of you that missed it, Forbes just released an article saying that rent in Chicago has reached its highest point ever. Now, we know, just if you've been watching the news, if you've had to sign your lease recently, that rent has been on the rise, not just in Chicago, but around the country. In many places, as a reflection of the higher cost of living, the higher home sale prices. Really, everything is up with inflation, down to the cost of assessments on through. So there's no escaping the fact that rent is going up. However, some cities are taking it worse than others. And at first glance, this article is a reflection of the fact that Chicago's market has gotten much more expensive to be a tenant. Breaking it down, the report says that rent across all bedroom counts in the city is $19.25 per month, with some areas of the city even higher. I mean, some neighborhoods like River North, one beds are averaging about $2,200 a month and ranging up from there. So there's a drastic range of rental prices in the city. And if you're curious, I'll drop a link for the article. You can see a breakdown by zip code of what rent you should expect. Now, context is everything. If you're watching this video from San Francisco, Los Angeles, New York, you're probably hearing these rental numbers and doesn't sound that bad. I mean, goodness gracious, New York at this point is what, $3,300 a month, I think they're averaging in rent. And Los Angeles is roughly $2,900 a month in rent. So in context, the fact that we're living in a major United States city and our rent is under $2,000 a month on average is pretty amazing. That said, when you look at the rest of the Midwest, Chicago is far and away the most expensive city. I mean, just going down the list here, Minneapolis, $1,649, Cincinnati, $1,486, Columbus, Ohio, $1,407, and it ranges down from there. So not only is Chicago the most expensive city to rent in, it's the most expensive city by several $100s compared to anywhere else in the Midwest. So what's the result of this? I mean, many tenants are facing difficult decisions. For some, that decision is, can I continue to afford living downtown? That might mean that they have to move to the suburbs to find affordable housing. It might mean that they need to take in roommates to cut down on the cost of rent month to month. Here's the reality of where rent is going to go from here. Until we see more tenants actively motivated to become homeowners, chances are good they're going to keep renewing and keep that demand for rental inventory high. And as long as that demand is high, we're probably not going to see too much of a drastic drop in rental prices. Now, the exception to that would be across the city, we have a lot of rental buildings that have been built. So in certain pockets, there's probably an over delivery of inventory for what the neighborhood actually needs. So you'll see some buildings that are giving steep discounts to try and get their occupancy rates up, particularly if they're new buildings in the next couple of years. But that's really not uncommon in like a normal market. Rent can't continue to go up at a drastic rate, so much so that it prices out the market. Obviously, Chicago needs to continue being a place that can affordably accommodate the millions of people that call this city home. But it's naive to think that it's going to stop going up. We've seen what happened in Los Angeles. We've seen what happened in San Francisco. We've seen what happened in New York. It's fair to assume that as cost of living in Chicago, as prices continue to go up, we are going to see rent increase. Okay, so rent demand at an extreme high. Rental prices at a historic high. What's the good news in all this? The good news is if you look at Chicago comparatively with other major Midwest cities, the rate of rental growth is actually lower than many of those other cities. So while places like Cincinnati had over a 7% adjustment year to year, or Detroit had over a 7% adjustment year over year, Indianapolis was over 8% year over year, Chicago's growth was closer to 2.5%, 3% year over year. So is rent at an all-time high? Absolutely. There's no debating that. But the rate at which your rent is increasing as a tenant is not as bad as we've seen in other cities. So it should give you some degree of confidence that when you get your next renewal bill, it hopefully won't be some soul-crushing number you were unprepared for. If you'd like to get out of the rental cycle, one of the best ways to do that is to start planning ahead, invest in yourself, and build equity. Look, ultimately, at the end of the day, you're probably paying your landlord's mortgage and maybe a little bit of profit for them. So when you see your rent going up, chances are good it's a reflection of the fact that their cost of living or cost of ownership went up too. So if you want to be on the other side of that coin and be in a position where you can at least be building equity through those increased costs and stop throwing away so much money at rent every single year, stop being at the whim and call of your landlord's renewal numbers, you can start investing in yourself by taking strategic steps today to buy a home. Talk with a lender, come up with a plan, talk with a real estate agent, and have an idea for how much money you can deploy in the market and where you want to deploy that. So what do you think? Do you have any questions? Did I miss anything? Leave your comments below. Hopefully this video was helpful. If you're looking to buy a home and I can be a resource for you, don't hesitate to reach out.